life and relationship coach and an intuitive empath. I want to talk to you today about a new TV series that's just come out on Netflix in Australia. It's called Dirty John, and it stars our very own Eric Bana and Connie Britton. It's a true story about how the main character in the TV series, Deborah, gets herself in an online relationship with Eric Bana, who's John, who turns out to be a psychopath. It became a 6-part series in the Los Angeles Times. Apparently a podcast was then made out of it, and now Netflix have produced a TV series. I think there are maybe 8 episodes in this TV series. It's gripping. You're going to want to watch it. It was really, really entertaining. It's one of those things on Netflix you're going to want to binge on, especially if you've been in a relationship with someone who was abusing you, psychologically, emotionally, or physically. When I watched it, I kind of cringed a little. I watched her and I could see myself in her. You know, I've had more than one narcissistic relationship, unfortunately. I've had a few. And I now work as a coach with women who are in narcissistic relationships or the victims of domestic violence, or having got themselves out of it, they're still trying to cope with the damage. So I think this is a really great series to watch, and let's talk about it. So Dirty John is a true story. It apparently happened in America, I think in California, in October of 2014, when Deborah Newell first met John Meehan online on a dating site. She is a woman who is financially secure, runs her own business. She has 2 grown-up daughters. I think they're like in their 20s, and she has a beautiful apartment that she lives in. You could say this woman has her shit together. But she's been married 4 times before, and she's doing online dating, and she meets Eric Bana. Now, we all know our Eric Bana. He's good looking, he's charming, and she develops a relationship with him. And like a lot of abusive relationships, this relationship looks in the beginning like it's perfect. He totally love bombs her. He is charming and he says all of the right things, and she feels like she's met her soulmate. When their relationship starts off, she does one really bad thing. She gives him her address for their first internet date. So she's never met him before, and he's going to show up at the door and he's going to walk her to the wherever cafe or restaurant or wherever they're going to meet. Her daughter, who lives with her, who's probably in her 20s and is quite outspoken, tells her that this is a really stupid thing to do, and her daughter actually opens the door when Eric Bana turns up, and she is straight away completely unimpressed with this guy because he's wearing shorts. I don't know whether that's ever happened to you. That's happened to me. Have you had a date turn up to pick you up, to take you out for maybe dinner or to the pub at night, and he turns up in shorts? I have. I wasn't impressed either. So I'm not going to kill the plot of the story because I want you to watch it. It doesn't turn out well. I'll just tell you that. We already know Eric Bana is probably a psychopath. So he does all of the things that abusive men do in relationships. He tries to isolate her from her family, who all hate him pretty much. Well, most of them don't like him, and her 2 daughters particularly don't like him. He tries to isolate her from her family. He takes over her finances, so this woman has money and he gets his hands on it. He manipulates her, he gaslights her. He's very nice, so he never actually kind of criticizes, belittles, or puts her down. He's not physically violent towards her. So as the story goes on and she starts to learn things about his past, she's a little bit disbelieving. You know, he tells her in the beginning that he's a doctor, and it turns out that he's not. And he tells her all of these lies, and as the story goes on, the lies are revealed. So that's the story. You know, if you're watching this, you probably know the story of abusive relationships. You know, they lie, they love bomb you, they get you to fall in love with them, they isolate you from your family, They make you crazy by gaslighting you, and before you know it, you're in love with this person that you think they are, but they turn out not to be. So it's a pretty common story. What I found most interesting about this, and the reason that I'm talking to you about it now, is that, you know, Connie is probably a woman in her 50s when she plays Deborah in the TV series. She's a woman in her 50s. She's no dummy. She has her shit together. Runs a business. She's obviously been a great mum, and she's a really nice person. And that's part of the problem. You know, I watched her, and, you know, I said at the beginning of this, I cringed. And I did cringe because I saw myself in her. She's so forgiving and understanding. She so wants this relationship to be a happy one, and she so wants to have a happy relationship that she's ignoring the red flags. And even when the red flags start to show up, at one point she leaves him and she goes back. And, you know, how many of you out there have done that? I've done that. I've gone back to narcissistic relationships more than once, unfortunately, because you convince yourself that they're going to change, that they're remorseful. They may cry, put their head in your lap and cry and sob and apologise and say all the things that you want them to say. Unfortunately, most of the time, when you take them back, they just go back to being their old self. They can't help themselves. They're liars. They're manipulators. They're about getting their own needs met. They're not about meeting your needs. Now, the biggest thing that I felt when I watched Connie that made me cringe is, as I said, I saw myself being too nice, being too understanding and too forgiving. Now, there's a reason for this in the series, because the story goes that 20 years before these events take place, Deborah's sister Connie was shot by her husband, and her mother in the series, I think her name's Arlene, is very deeply religious and goes to church and believes in forgiveness. So we see through the story that Deborah's mother encourages her in being forgiving and seeing the best in people. Now, I've got no problem with that. I'm very spiritual, so I am like that too. I've had to train myself kind of to be a little bit less naive, less innocent, and more realistic. There are awful people out there in the world. There are people out there in the world who want to take advantage of you, who deceive you and manipulate you. If you've been in a narcissistic relationship, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. You already know that. So Arlene, Deborah's mother, actually went to court apparently and testified on the behalf of the husband that shot her daughter Connie. And he gets off from the murder charge, and I think they get him on manslaughter, and he's given 5 years, but he's out in 3. So he shoots her daughter and he's out in 3 years, and he shoots the daughter because she wanted to leave him, and so it was, you know, a crime of control and power. And when you look at the story, the mother has apparently actually gone to court, and the prosecutor said that she threw her daughter under the bus. She sacrificed her daughter to save this guy. And what she says in her defense is that she knew that he loved her daughter, and she wanted to be forgiving because the Bible tells you to be forgiving. So that's what I call spiritual bypass shit. I've done that, and I paid the price for it. And you see the price being paid by the family, and particularly Deborah in this movie, because Deborah has taken on these beliefs of her mother about being forgiving and thinking the best of people, and, you know, no one's perfect, everybody makes mistakes, you know, everyone deserves a second chance, all that stuff. Now, we might say all of that is true, but it doesn't turn out well. Yeah, it doesn't turn out well. So I watched Deborah make all these mistakes, and I thought about mistakes that I'd made, the similar mistakes that I'd made in relationships, and being too forgiving, being too naive, hoping for the best. We've all done that. Don't forget that manipulative people, manipulative men in relationship, narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, handpick women who are forgiving and kind and nice and empathic, and they manipulate us because we allow ourselves to be manipulatable. So it's interesting. I'd like to hear your comments. Have any of you been in relationship with someone like that and used that spiritual bypass thing afterwards, have thinking of yourself as being a little bit naive, a bit innocent? You know, the fact that Arlene says that the husband that murdered her daughter loved her, you know, is just gobsmacking to me, because that's not love. You do not kill people that you love. You don't kill someone who wants to leave you because you won't let them. I mean, that isn't love. That's not love at all. So if you think that's love, if you thought that was love, yeah, that's one belief you're really going to want to change. And the fact that Deborah actually leaves John Mann in the series and then she goes back to him is really interesting too. Like I said, I've done that, and I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment if you've gone back, because most of us have. And the reasons that we go back are interesting. One of the reasons Deborah goes back to him is this spiritual bypass thing. Another one we might say is that she's too nice. Another one is that she's been married 4 times, so we probably know that she's codependent. In between her marriages, it appears to me, she always has one of her children living with her. So she's never alone, so maybe she doesn't want to be alone. Maybe she is codependent. So it's really interesting, the reasons that women go back to these relationships. I've done another video on all of those reasons why we go back, and so you can click on the link and have a look at that video. So if I were you, at the first opportunity, I'd head over to Netflix and I'd watch Dirty John. One of the things that freaked me out when I saw what it was and I started watching it is that my last narcissist was called John, and he had an alternate persona that he told me about really early in our relationship. He called him Evil John, his other dark side. He told me that and then he laughed. And being starstruck and love-bombed as I was at the time, I thought he was joking. By the end of the relationship, I realised he wasn't joking at all, and he was very proud of that Evil John part of him. And the Dirty John reference in the TV series comes from Eric Bana's mates. They actually apparently started calling him Dirty John when they were younger together. So interesting. So go over to Netflix, watch the series, come back here, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. Before you leave, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like this.